1 minute. Can't see what it is. All right. So welcome, guys. Welcome for this e-meet. Today we have Mr. Sanchit, architect from Renaissance Studio. So every Sunday between 4 and 6, we have we are inviting a prominent architect, industrial designer, or a fashion designer, with the main motto of trying to understand what they are doing, what work they are, how they are engaged, and etc. Because the reason is, as you know, that DQ Labs is trying to help design aspirants to get into a design career and do really well. So we are trying to give this kind of exposure for the parents and also the students, because many parents are not from this professional background and they do not know, they have a lot of questions, right? So this is a platform where they can actually understand directly from these professionals what kind of work they are doing, and if they understand that, they can probably help their children to support to become successful professionals as well. So today we have Mr. Sanchit Arora. So you all might have seen this Pink Zebra restaurant all over internet. It has been showcased in a lot of magazines and even online and physical magazines. And when I had a look at it at the first time, I was like, wow, what is this? I mean, so bold, so revolutionary. I mean, we have not seen anything like that before. You know, that play of color and the white and black lines, and couple that with the active shadows created by the pergolas and all that, right? So it was very, very interesting. So when I searched further, then I came to know that it was done by Sanchit Arora, and I was like, oh my god, this is so awesome, because we had met some 5 years back during one workshop in Milan.
Yeah.
So Design Quotient DQ Labs has organized one workshop in Milan, and Sanchit has accompanied us, where he and the local Italian students, they have combined together and they worked on a live project, and it was a very, very interesting interaction we had, and I was very happy to see that work, and I thought, okay, it would be so awesome to get him on this e-meet. And I spoke to him, and he was very welcomingly said, yes, I can do that, and I would love to do that. So thank you so much, Sanchit.
Thank
um,
you, Krish.
I suggest all of you to go to renaissancestudio.com to understand their work. In fact, Sanchit is gonna use that website to showcase their work. What is very interesting with these guys is, you know, they are following a process, and everything is documented and easily available for anybody to go and see the work, right? And they're always ready with their documented work. That is really amazing. Sanchit, welcome to the show, and
Thanks,
all
Krish.
over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
You can start sharing your screen, Sanchit. Oops. All right. Since Sanchit has gone offline, okay, let us just give him a little bit of time to come back. So meanwhile, what I can do is I can share my screen, and we can probably explore his website further. All right. Okay. All right. So they are based out of New Delhi. right, I think Sanchit is back. Yeah, so let me just make him a co-host.
Hi.
Yeah, Sanchit, you're back. Awesome. Okay, you can share your screen. I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay, you are on mute. You can unmute yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear
Yeah.
me now? Okay, so can I share my screen now, Mish?
Yes, yes, you can.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Sanchit Arora. The studio head architect at Renaissance Architecture Design Interior Studio. We are a New Delhi-based firm, as you know it. So, well, out here today, I think I'm not going to talk. Obviously, we're going to majorly talk about work and architecture as a whole. But more than that, I think it's the whole um, the idea of being an architect, the idea of actually having a thought of being an architect, and how do you kind of go ahead with it, because as I've been told, there are a lot of parents watching this, a lot of students watching this. We need to kind of get to a solution. What is right, what is wrong, or what are the difficulties in kind of being an architect. So, I mean, let's go ahead. I'll just start my screen. Just give me a second. Okay. Can you see it? Can everyone see it?
Yeah,
Perfect.
it's visible.
Perfect. All right. So, guys, this is Studio Renaissance. This is our website. And today I'm going to talk about some of our works. Obviously, this is in regard to where we started from where we are. So, this is almost a 16-year-old to a 20-year-old firm that was formed by my father, who is himself an architect. His name is Sanjay Arora. So as an architect's son, you have so much pressure from day one, and while you're having your education, secondary education, to whether you really want to kind of be an architect, or you really want to kind of pursue something else as a profession. So I felt, as a young guy, growing up in a house of architects. My mother also happens to be an interior designer. I personally have been brought up in an environment where I have actually seen only architecture interiors by birth. So that was the fun part, as well as the sad part, because I didn't see the diversification in other sort of areas or avenues if I wanted to do. So while I had graduated from my 10th into the 11th, so I had to make a choice, whether I need to do architecture or not. But there was no other choice for me, uh, to not do architecture, because it was so interesting. And the whole idea of actually making something for others to be habitable in is something that gives me joy. It gives me pleasure. It gives, there's this, I was just reading a book by Corbusier, and one of my friends actually quoted his lines, and I kind of cannot get over it, which says that, Corbusier used to envy his own buildings because they would outlive his own age, and that is actually what has happened. So that is the sort of the command that an architect has over his buildings, and over the near future, or the long future, because what he does in the present while looking at the past to create something for future is something exceptional. So without kind of taking things forward, let's take things forward. Let's take you through the different projects. All right, just give me a second. So the first project, so while you can go through our website, this is called studiorenaissance.com. You can definitely go, all my projects are there. Once you click on it, it's been curated for your kind of viewing, with all the projects that have been given on the website. So today, what is exciting about, Umesh, Mr. Umesh and Mr. Dion, thank you so much firstly for kind of giving me this opportunity, because we go back 5 years, 6 years back, when we kind of met in Italy while doing the workshop, and I'm grateful to them for all the experience that they gave me at that juncture of my life. So today I kind of decided to kind of do a workshop belonging to architecture and interiors, and the diversification of work that happens through architecture or interiors. I mean, in the sense of not stopping yourself to being, you know stopped by the being practical, but not stopping yourself from crossing the line, or restricting yourself. So today we're gonna take you through the whole ambience of a lot of projects that we have done. Not, you would see that not any project is similar. The material play, the color play, the textures, or a lot of things that you see in this are all different in each and every project. So firstly, I will take you to this newly done. It's a lifestyle decor studio in Amritsar, where they sell lifestyle products or home decor stuff. So as you can see in the picture, what we wanted to do is, we all know the whole concept of Atmanirbhar, the whole self-sufficient, self-reliance that's happening in today's world, in India. So it is very important, and how to kind of go indigenous in the Indian material play. So what we decided to, for example, do in this project was to kind of create these bricks. All right. So if you may ask me, what are these bricks made of? These are all terracotta bricks that you see, the houses that are made of. So we kind of went to a brick kiln, got these bricks kind of curated in specific sizes and specific designs. So then the next question is, how did you reach this design? So we usually work very closely with our graphic designers, the graphic designers that you see nowadays. At Renaissance we try to collaborate. It's a coalition. It's a complete package of A to Z, where we actually start with kind of closely working with the graphic designer, taking her process involved, his or her process involved. For example, in this, we worked closely with a very young graphic designer called Lakshita Jain. So we sat down with her, we kind of tried to create a module of a logo. And from that logo, we created this brick at the Bricklin. So the architecture needs to correspond with the brand identity. At Renaissance, we do believe that the brand identity is very important. So in that sense, we try to create this brick and the space along with that. So as you can see, this is a very cost effective way of kind of doing up a space. You had these concrete renderings called gutai, that we call it locally, and these terracotta bricks, kind of creating these pockets of spaces and experience as we went through. So you can see these ideations that we had created with our team, because I'm really lucky to have an excellent team of graphic designers, graphic work people, architects on board with us with the technical support. So as an architect, definitely you feel very lucky when we have these particular people on board to kind of do these kind of work for you, because to kind of create a design freedom, or the design ability to do kind of go beyond your own scope, requires first for me, or as an architect, to kind of create these pockets of people who do their specific work, from the ideation with the graphic designer, to actually conceptualizing it with my team, to actually getting it down to the technical head of the studio, to actually experimenting at the brick place, to with the technical guy, to kind of doing it at the site through the detailing. It is exceptionally important to kind of get everything on board. So while the whole process of Renaissance, did take me, I've been working for 5-6 years now. So, it's architecture is definitely not easy for people who are actually seeing this. It is not, I would say, a child's play that, you go there 1 year or 2 years and you're like, wow, bang, I'm this architect, I'm that architect. No, I mean, you have to be very humble. You have to be very patient. And, I think taking my example, I would say that, I mean, I have been lucky to kind of work with my father, learn from him, the whole practicality aspect, the technical aspect, while I really wanted to kind of conceptualize out of the box ideas. So, well, it is a long process. It is definitely not an easy process. You have a lot of ups and downs. Please go through them, because in the end, if probably I can do it, you can definitely do much better than me. And the idea is to be very passionate about your work. Day one, be passionate, be honest, and be happy with what you do. As you can see, this is the sort of planning that we did with the terracotta blocks, and the material play was simple: a terracotta red color with the concrete. So for us at the Studio Renaissance, we want to create something that is sometimes really subtle, very minimal, very nicely done in terms of the material play, or we go bizarre, be it a pink zebra, as Umesh mentioned it. So it's an extremist move. In all my talks, I do mention about the extremist move of my firm, because we are extremists. We don't want to kind of play bang in the middle, because playing in the middle is playing it safe. Definitely can work for you, can work for me as well. But I think as an architect, what you're given a chance to kind of express yourself, it is very important. Either you go bizarre, or be an extremist in terms of a maximalist, or be a minimalist. So the choice is definitely yours. Don't play or be the average guy and bang in the middle, being it safe. So try to study the context behind each and every project. Try to create your own module, your own identity. Identity is the most important aspect in architecture. If you have your identity, if your firm has your identity, if your work has your identity, then you go forward with what you think is right or wrong. Take your decisions and do it with all your passion. For example, now as we go through this, you see the pictures also start talking a story. So our work doesn't end with the work being finished at the site. We have photographers who kind of click these beautiful pictures that you see, in terms of documenting it. So I've been working closely with my photographer Nivedita Gupta, and she has an exceptional eye for photography. So it is fun working with her, because the design process that starts from a graphic designer with me till to the middle vantage point, where we are as a team working on the project to kind of getting it done, to another level of design that comes through a lens of a photographer, be it Nivedita Gupta or Surya Andang. But it's exceptional to see how these photographers give their own kind of liking to a project, in the sense of creating a different viewing avenue to a project. So for example, Nivedita shot this one, and the way she kind of used these bricks to kind of represent these items, or instead of a human figure as you may see in a normal photo shoot, to express the scale, she she kind of came up with the story of using these bricks. And I think that was, in terms of creating a module of an architecture that we want to see, was just brilliant. So as you can see, the texturization that has been done out there, from this being the reception area, you start feeling the essence that it should not hit you on your eye. Because at the end of the day, if it's a retail store, please understand the retail store is for the public experience of looking or selling the product that's been there, not your space. Because the space remains stationary, but the objects that are kept to be sold are the ones that need to be highlighted. So always be sure, in the sense of, if you're doing a retail space and if you want to kind of create your own module or identity of an architecture, don't overpower it, in the sense of when you compare it to the product. So that was the main idea behind this. While we talk about these pieces that have been sold, these were, the experience has to be like you going to let's say a Met at New York, or any gallery that you've experienced, be it a Guggenheim. If you've ever been to Guggenheim, you see the spiral staircases. The architecture is definitely overpowering, but it's all white. It is all very subtle, very basic, but the pieces, the art pieces, the art gallery, take your, in the sense of your eye, and it kind of notifies you once you go through it. So that is what I call good architecture, when it speaks a lot but yet doesn't speak a lot, in terms of when it comes to selling of a product. So that is the first essence of taking you through a retail project like this, because we do a lot of retail projects, in the sense of be it a retail or a hospitality or a press complex, to a numerous amount of houses or residences that we've been doing. So I definitely want you as a whole audience to kind of go through the whole spectrum of a lot of projects that we've been doing lately. So for example, the placement of the product, the way it's been done, it is so important. How we can kind of create these study models or these digital analogs to kind of create or see or experience the space even before it's done. Obviously that comes with the technology that's been there prevailing, but the answer doesn't end there. Obviously you have to do a lot of sampling kind of before getting down to the actual reality. But go with your instinct, be sure of what you're doing, and then just do it. Don't stop yourself. That's the idea. you know be it anything.
All right, Sanchit, I have a couple of questions here.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So the design process you told is quite interesting. So you're starting with graphic design of the
Yeah,
space,
yeah, yeah,
and then you're walking through, and you're ending with the photography, and
yeah,
to kind of
yeah,
balance in between.
yeah,
Quite interesting, and it also reminds me of the Zaha Hadid's work. Like she used to paint after she gets a project. She visits the place, and then she comes back and she does a painting, and then that painting will be like a guide all through her work.
yeah,
You know, so that's a very good insight, because some other architects, when we talk about, they give a lot of importance to the site and the cultural surroundings and the alignments and etc etc
yeah,
and their approach is more two-dimensional on a paper with a pencil and pen kind of
yeah.
a thing. So that's a
Umesh, you,
great.
you rightly kind of pointed out a very good point, because a lot of architects, be it a Frank Gehry, be it a Frank Lloyd Wright, or
Hmm.
be it a Tadao Ando, you do read a lot of books, right? You do have a lot of Tashkent books based on their work. I luckily have a Zahadi book as well in my office. So while we go through their works, please understand that what you rightly pointed out is that they go through a process. Every building, every project is an experience. It's an experience of your life. You go through life while making it, right? So to kind of commemorate it, in the sense of uh, doing justice to it, obviously she decides to paint in the end, or Tadao wants to kind of sketch it out, and and that becomes a piece of a masterpiece. What you see as an architect, while I was beginning to become an architect, I would see the sketches of Oscar Niemeyer, for that matter, and I'd be like intrigued, like how did he think of it, from this sketch, getting on to that point. So it's all a process. You can't be an architect in one day, just like that. You can't have one sketch getting back to a actual manifestation of a physical aspect in one day. So it is a process. These guys what we are
Right.
talking about are all experienced guys. So with all due respect to them, the greats of this field.
Right. So is this the general process you follow for all your projects?
Yes, definitely. Umesh, a process is very important. What I've seen lately in architecture in India, for that matter, because the architecture of the West or the rest of the world, be it Vietnam or Southeast Asia, that's happening for me is very overwhelming, in the sense that the process that they have is so honest, so indigenous in their way. If you see all the Vietnamese house that you're making, if you follow this company called VTN Architects, please do follow their work, in the sense of uh, they use locally available materials. Okay, they use uh, the whole process of sketching, in the sense of getting the whole plan of the site, from there ideating, in the sense of the climate condition response, to probably how they want to create a new module of architecture. The idea starts at being different, right? If you don't want to be different, that's your call. That's totally up to you. You want to do it in a very commercial way, architecture, that's up to you. But if you're passionate enough for architecture, if you want to give in your 100%, I think going beyond where you are starting to think or you end thinking, to go one step ahead, is where your passion for the field comes in, where it kind of drives you to keep thinking, keep looking at your own design, critiquing it. And very important, a lot of architects say, right, it's very important to critique your work, look at that in a way that, if you're a different architect while you're making the architecture yourself. So that's very important. I mean, it's a hush hush statement, but I think it works really well, because you need to take care of your own work. You need to critique your own work to give it a newness. If it's not new, what are you giving to the world of architecture? So that's why when you talk about that, you give an example of Zadi. Why? Because she was different. She was ahead of her time. So that's the idea. If you can be looking at the near future while looking at in the past, while being in present, while using the locally available materials for that matter, let's say, that is what intrigues me about architecture. Why, as Indians, we are rich in materials. We are rich in materials in the sense of, be it a red sandstone, be it the Dholpur stone, be it a Kota stone. There's so much that every territory of India as a whole geological, backdrop has, and we need to kind of consume what's there locally. And that is where my idea of, when Mr. Modi says Atmanirbhar or self-reliance comes in. And I am being very honest that my future projects will be based on all Indian materials. I can vouch for that.
That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah. So we have a couple of questions here from Priyanka Rajani.
Hi, Priyanka.
Um, so she's saying a lot of your projects are a play on texture, colors, materials, and patterns.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line for it being too much or too overwhelming?
So, Priyanka, that's a great question, because, while I did, at the start of my career, I did Pink Zebra, right? I'll take you to that project right away, right? Just imagine, I was a young kid, let's say I was 22 back then, and I was doing this project, which kind of got our firm a lot of international accolades and, fame. Uh, when well, the process has been very different. It's been an unreal experience. While we started doing this project, thankfully the client kind of decided to go with the whole instinct of doing this, and this kind of created a whole buzz around the world that time. The whole idea is being, just like I mentioned, the extremist move, right? How do we decide that is a great question, because it depends on the context, the how we play with the textures, the materials, the ideologies. uh, it definitely depends on how the client wants the space to be. What is the typology of the space? Is it a retail? Is it a hospitality? Is it a home? Is it a hospitality project in the sense of, let's say, a hotel or a boutique hotel? Because there are different aspects to it. So just tell me, if I have to ask you, Priyanka, would you do a house like Pink Zebra, or a Pink Zebra, which is a enjoyable experience for few hours like a house? So that kind of answers your question. It depends definitely on the prototype, in the sense of, what is the program of the place you are making. So while we did Pink Zebra, that was my first project, my graph of kind of settling down in the sense of, as an architect, I'm also maturing. It's been almost 6 years. I'm 28 now. So once we go to the other projects of the restaurants that we have done, they are also maturing. The taste of people is also maturing. We are not the people which who we were 6 years or 5 years back, and that is how the design also changes. The design world is also ever changing. It's changing daily. So from what the design world, or let's say, for example, let's take Italy is showing at Salon in 2015 or 2016, to what it's showing now, 2020. Let's say it didn't happen by 2019. The design trends are also changing, and with that you have to also have a response to that. So that is where my question comes in. With different time periods, you decide on your own in terms of the typology of the project and how you want to make it. So that is very important. For what I was at Pink Zebra to what I am at Together at 12th, the restaurant that I did using all the indigenous Indian stones. It would be very interesting to kind of show you the whole sort of circumference of a lot of projects that we're doing, because while we did that, we are also doing this project now. So times change. the person I am as I'm designing, I've also kind of matured. So things change. The client wants a fine dine, not a, like a crazy a lounge experience like Pink Zebra. So with any sort of the client answering you or asking you what he wants, or how he wants to do it. So that it kind of answers a lot of queries regarding how we want to play, as maximalist or kind of minimalist. So yeah, that's the answer.
All right, cool. So she has another question. She says most architects have a standard of how their projects look like. For example, Rossi or Mayer or uh, Gary. Do you
Yeah.
have do you have a set of guidelines that you use? What are the things you look at in your design process?
That's another great question, because I do talk about my, it's been a different transition. I've obviously taken the whole firm forward from my father while he's been still working with us. So uh, it's obviously our time to shine, obviously, as he says it too. So the whole transition process between my father, who happens to be a very authentic, pencil ideated architect who kind of creates magic with his pencil, to someone who works on the laptop, while we're talking on a laptop right now. So times have changed. So is the idea. So he kind of said something very interesting back then, 5-6 years back, that while I say it on a lot of talks, that it's a 5-year plan. Okay. Within the first 5 years, you need to be bizarre. You need to experiment with what your brain can think of, what you haven't even thought of. Be experimental, because for me, the philosophy is that every project is a different ideation, it's a different experience, and it's a different life experience as you're going through it. So it's very important in the first 5-year plan, or let's say the initial start of the next 5-year plan as well. What's happening for me, I am going to go bizarre. I'm going to go all out in terms of diversifying my portfolio, because I don't know whether which client that is seeing my portfolio while we are seeing this would like this project or that project. You need to be open, because with every project that you see, as I rightly mentioned, there is a different color, there is a different texture, there is a different aspect, there is a different ideology, there is a different story. So while there is one thing common, is the Renaissance sort of a design theory that goes in every project, be it a material choice of Indian, as we see this is the Dholpur stone. So for an international brand like, let's say Meridian, where Together at 12th open, it's by a young chef and an experienced, amazing bartender who kind of collaborated to kind of provide a togetherness experience. They wanted to create something that was Indian yet international. So how do you create it? So again, I go back to my whole concept of a concept note that's given by a client to what you want to kind of create as a module, to what is the final answer. So this unique amalgamation of a lot of things that come together forms something that is unique.
Right. So very interesting questions that are coming up. So
Sure.
Sanjana Mahave is asking, did you ever come across a client who wanted your company's work for his or her space, but have completely contrasting ideas to your designs for said space? How did you tackle that situation?
So while we're going through all these things, again, okay, before I answer that question, while we go through the whole concept of taking, the graphic designer on board to the final stage and how you want to create, this is a fine dine space. And the whole, why is it called Together at 12? Because it's the 12th floor of a very famous hotel chain. And while you see all the names of the people who have worked on it, and that creates a story that the world revolves around togetherness. It's not about one person owning the restaurant, it's about the whole team. And that is our philosophy as well as Renaissance Studio, because it is not me. I may be the face of it, but it's my team. It's our team. It's our culture that kind of creates the happiness, and about the whole idea of doing something different. So can you kind of repeat the question, please, Amish?
So what she's saying is,
Yeah.
okay, so you have certain ideas and your client has certain ideas,
Yeah.
okay, and they don't match. So how do you tackle that? And you feel that certain things have to be done in a certain way, but the client says no.
So that's a great question, because amazing questions coming in, by the way.
Yeah.
So I have gone through this whole process, right? A lot of people do ask me that, how do you get this, like liberty to do something crazy? How did you get to make a pink zebra? How did you get to make this, that? So you also asked the same question, right, Umesh? So um, I'll tell you the story. Okay, this is about this project, very recently done project last year, and this is called. It's for a brand, Indian-based brand who deal in making these. What you call it, a game bars, like the box games that you have. So they came to me and they wanted to create a kind of a different module. This is situated in Gurgaon in Delhi, and they had the culture of gaming inside the whole space that they wanted. So they had an existing sort of identity which was created somewhere in Ahmedabad, and she had a specific sort of rundown of a tick mark list of what she wanted, what she didn't want, what she wanted as a space, what all she didn't want. So that was pretty specific, and it was, on her end, she was right. But for me as an architect, I had to push her, you know, come out her in the envelope of thinking that she had, and she also pushed me to kind of come out of my envelope to create this place that we as architectural nomenclature call it the geometrication. Because if a space revolves around the board game cafe, it's very important to give a feel to a person who's coming to eat and play board game cafe through him being actually within a board game to feel the same. So that was the concept behind it. And when I pitched the idea to her, she really liked it. And uh, then you may ask me what was the influence behind it. Obviously, there are games like Monument Valley that you can see through the influence, but major influences obviously came through the whole, MC Archer and Jantar Mantar field. So it is very interesting to do such projects because, even though the client never, visualized it, because it's very tough for any client to kind of visualize it. But you as an architect have the liberty, have the thought or the working that is going on in your mind. But if you can kind of sell it off to your client, there's nothing better than it. So this process was prevalent in, can be definitely seen in this project, because we went through the whole space, taking it through the whole idea of being in a game while playing a game at the board game cafe. So we be true and honest to the whole feeling of the space. And rightly said, from the first day of a graphic designer, sitting down with him, telling him that we wanted graphics like this, to the final day, sitting down with Nivedita Gupta, who's my photographer, to kind of creating these, interesting man with the mirror concept where you kind of deceive people, through the photo shoot. So this was the plan. You do see a lot of Renaissance, sort of a philosophy going in from a Terra Matter studio that we discussed first. That was the first project, to what you see now. The things have changed. The thought has changed from being a retail store to an eating space. So it is very important to have, it may answer Priyanka's question as well, how to kind of change your aspect while we are going through. So this is how you kind of change, while being in your own identity. So where the flooring might change, the whole idea of aspects might change from a curvy linear positioning of jalis to rectilinear partitions coming in. That is how you create a module, which is in your own identity, but yet different.
Right. Interesting. So, a couple of other questions. So, Impu is asking, what is your design philosophy? I think these are some of the questions you have answered, but I'm just reading out the question.
Yeah.
If you feel that anything can be added, you can probably add to that question. What is your design philosophy, and how did you get the idea of pink zebra? Were you inspired by any other designer or architect? So, especially the pink zebra, when we are talking about the project, what was your inspiration?
Pink zebra. Okay. Wow. So, obviously it's been like 6 years, 5, 6 years ever since we did Pink Zebra, I hope I've answered you the question of the whole design aspect, or the
Right.
whole thought that we go through in terms of architecture. So the design development of Pink Zebra actually dates back when when we used to kind of travel to the site. This is in Kanpur. It's in Uttar Pradesh. It's a pretty amazing city out there, which was under the East India rule. So that's why if you see it, the name of the space is called Feast India
Yeah.
Company, and that's where we got the quirkiness going in terms of playing with names, playing with words. And while I was coming back, because there was no, it was a kind of a remote area in the sense of going there by planes. We used to travel in trains, and the trains would definitely take much more time. So while coming back in the train, I had my laptop, and we were just going through movies, and I was with my team. Specifically, remember Mr. Virender sir, who happens to be the technical head, and Mr. And Marav, who was working with me that time on this project. Uh, we came across this movie called by Wes Anderson, who happens to be one of my favorite, directors, The Grand Budapest Hotel. And I was watching it, and I got so inspired in the sense of his cinematography, his angles, his nodal points of architecture, and the ideas he had in terms of expressing it through the lens. I just wanted to kind of capture the whole essence of Pink Zebra through shots, through frames, rather than it being a simple, boring transitional space of a restaurant. Because the client wanted to create something like a spectacle in the city. It's a two-tier city. Creating a spectacle obviously wasn't difficult, but to kind of run through the whole idea of it being in Kanpur, which was under the East India Company. All the public buildings out there, since the East India Company control, were under pink, were all pink color. Okay, so that is where the pink color came in for. And I won't lie, we never had the stripes initially. So that was an afterthought, because while we were doing everything pink, it just, in tier two cities, obviously, you do have a sort of a lot of a gender basic centric mindset, where they kind of related pink to, it being a sort of a bloomy space, rather than a very, like a sort of a quiet space. So that is where we thought to kind of create the quirkiness through these strips. So you may just ask me why the strips, because it was something that kind of blended in. And while the story goes, it's a long story. While we were kind of creating it, it was holy time, and we were playing holy, and we ended up playing chess, and then chess kind of correlated to pink color. So as I say, it's all an experience. While you are yourself having a life experience, while the project is running parallel with you, uh, the projects kind of control your life, and your life controls the project. So it's an intermingling experience. And you come, if for example, if you dream of something, and the next day you are designing it, it is it is like that. And that is how we came down to the Pink Zebra, because it was initially not called Pink Zebra, it was called the Pink Chess. But later on, it was termed by my father as the Pink Zebra, and the rest is history. This is what we have as a product.
That's cool. That is very cool. Um, I'm quite curious to see the process. Like, okay, when your graphic designer is working on an idea,
Sure.
so what are they working on? Like some random visuals, or a space and visualizing the space in a graphical manner? What are they working on?
So Umesh, that's another great question. Okay, because I keep getting asked the same question, because while I closely work with a lot of graphic designers, uh, for example, for a Terramata studio, for example, for a restaurant, for example, for the other big hospitality projects, or for example, an office for that matter, things change. The client concept note changes. So me and the graphic designer sit together with the client and take his or her inspiration of the space. That's the first, idea which
Mhm.
every architect would be doing. So that's not something that's exceptional. So we sit down with the client, we hear him out, we want to kind of gauge into his mind, because firstly, it's very, very important to sit inside the brain of your client, think from his own aspect. What is his thinking? What is his aspect? What is his budget? What does he want? What does he want to kind of try? What is the way he's trying to kind of indicate his brand to kind of go into in the future? So that is where the graphic designer and me later on sit. Uh, our first try is obviously to give the freedom to the graphic designer that, okay, come up with some solutions, come up with some iterations in terms of, let's say, when I tell Akshata, give me 5, 6 iterations, and she gives it to me. And then from there, we sit down and try to create architectural innovations through the graphic design. So for example, at Terra Matter Studio, from her graphic design, we actually came down to a brick design and went back with what was possible with the brick to back to her in the sense of changing it with whatever was possible in the brick. And it's a to and fro process. So it is a very beautiful process that you also like in the sense of a graphic designer making something, you making something, and then what is actually practical as per the research and development that's happening parallel to your firm. So in terms of
Right.
materials, so that is what kind of creates a beautiful amalgam. So that is what we
So,
basically done.
so the graphic designer does some abstract graphic to
Yes,
capture the
yes,
intent of the client. So it's an
yes,
abstract graphic.
yes.
So based on that, you draw inspiration and then you start
Architecturally,
working
architecturally.
architecturally.
So she
Yeah.
is on a different parallel. Please
Yes.
understand, a client is on a different parallel. You
Hmm.
are on a different parallel. The graphic designer is on a different parallel.
Hmm.
But the architect and the graphic designer are working perpendicularly also while being parallel. So the
Right.
connection between them is when she gives you an abstract, and from that abstract, you create a module of an architectural
Right.
module. And
That's
that
correct.
is where we gauge to give something new to the client. So
Hmm.
this perpendicular movement while being parallel is something very important to us.
Okay. So by the way, do you have any graphics, such graphics? Can you share with us? Would you like to share any of those such graphics?
Sure. Like for example, I can definitely share it. This was the initial
Yeah.
graphics. While I can share it with you, you
Okay.
see this? This was the rustic owner's
Okay.
aspirations. So from there, we created the brick
So
that you
this is
see.
the so that is the graphic
That's the logo.
your
That's the
graphic
logo.
designer has given.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the logo.
That's the logo she has created.
Yes. From this
A
logo,
brand. Okay.
we went down to what was actually possible at site.
Okay.
We had a circle.
Okay.
So basically, obviously, please understand that graphic designers are not just like us, are reaching a
Right.
vantage point where minimalism, playing with geometries is very important. And
Right.
while she is also playing, or he was also playing with geometries, we are also playing with the architectural geometries. So how do you correlate? Makes
Hmm.
it more, like how the branding comes in then later on. You see this? This is
Right.
what gives me uh, uh, you know there is a sense of pride as an architect, that we took
Right.
it. It's an honest process. We are not stopping anywhere. We're going from A to Z, being honest, so
Right.
that it kind of gives you happiness, in the end.
Right.
And for
So
anyone watching this, please understand, architecturally, architecture is not just about being an architect giving a building to your client. It's about a process that you live through with your client. It's his happiness. It's about his happiness. If he's happy in the end, you as an architect are successful. So please make sure that professionally, when you're helping your client, go through the whole process, help him out from A to Z. And if while he's paying you, that's not what gives me happiness on a whole, but the whole project being successful, the whole project being giving him money later on, and the whole idea of the project making him happy is what I look at as a happiness quotient of a
right.
project.
Cool. So as I understand, the graphic that you're showing here is the brand identity of that space. Right.
Yes.
So are you saying that when you're discussing with your client, first you're trying to identify what is the identity that they are looking for, and
Yes.
then your graphic designer does some identity or branding design, and
Yes.
you take that and move forward to the architecture space.
Yes, definitely.
That
Because
is the process.
that's the process. Because
Okay.
see Umesh, it depends from a project to project.
Of
Okay,
course.
there are
Yes.
some projects, there are some going to be some projects that are coming in the future, because I haven't obviously documented it because of the
Hmm.
lockdown.
Hmm.
But there are projects, you see this picture,
Hmm.
it kind
Yeah.
of creates an identity. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have definitely specialized in brand identities. These are for the brands who have sort of lost their identity
Mm-hmm.
lately and kind of recreating the whole rebirth of the whole space. And that is exactly what Renaissance means as a firm. It's the rebirth of architecture, art, and the influence it has on the people. So we take it honestly. We kind of redefine what's there in the market to what it can be through cost effective measures, through simple ideas. And these are all simple, ever changing ideas, so life changing ideas. So the idea is that while these things are happening, it cannot be like, I cannot justify saying that a graphic designer gets me an abstract and then I work on a architectural note or a concept, and then I go back to her and say this. No, in some projects it can be me getting some architectural element and giving it back to her. For example, in the future projects, I'm using this X material, and I go back to her and say that, can we use this in the logo? Can the color of the logo be like that? And sometimes the material drives the project, sometimes it's the graphic designer's abstract that drives the project, and
Right.
sometimes it's the client's need and concept that drives the project. So it's a beautiful process that I can't you know kind of say it right now, but it's an experience that you go through in each and every client, because each and every client is a different human being, and his whole process is is ever changing throughout different projects, so, and throughout the different moments of the project. So I cannot justify that right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's quite interesting because you're not just designing the spaces, but also you're giving an identity for your client, for his brand.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you should be charging double your price because you're also doing branding design and also architecture
No,
design
no,
for each other.
we do charge. That is separate.
You do
That
charge, okay.
that
That's
is
pretty cool.
separate.
Right.
So
Okay.
so we do take money for the hard work that we do.
Right.
So no. For example, while we're going through this project of, let's say, an optical showroom,
Yeah,
that's
this is a
what
pretty
this
cool
process.
one. Yeah.
Okay. So now this is a 40-50 year old the brand that was there,
Mm.
dilapidated, sort of a shop, and we had to change it. Obviously, just like me, the kid who happens to be another optometrist, from his father, was taking the reins, and he also wanted to kind of change it. So each and every project that you see now, when I go back to one of the questions that was asked early, in terms of the material play, you see now this is again an Indian stone that you see. It looks very Italian, it looks
Yeah.
very international, but it's an Indian stone, it's an Indian marble. To what we have in the backdrop is a terrazzo finish, obviously, and these are all we got people from Uttar Pradesh, especially to do these terrazzo walls, because it's very it's impossible to kind of do these terrazzo walls. So to kind of get specialized labor to do these sort of finishes. So again, I go back to the whole point that each and every project is a different opportunity for you to create madness or beauty through identifying the potential of the materials and the palettes that you can create. So for example, obviously you may ask me this, it's a kind of a space that we wanted to create. It's a wide shaded space, terrazzo happening, while this is the facade, as you see. You may ask me, why is it this the facade? So while people are going through on the road, we need to make them stop, kind of identify it as an optical shop. So through your architecture, how the curves and the arches come in, and how the specs, or the these shades and those these shapes of the shades can actually alter themselves into being mirrors for outside people, to create a sort of a stoppage in their minds. So that is what we kind of want to create as an architectural element out here. So the logo never changed in this project,
Okay.
because obviously it was going on for the longest years, so they didn't want to change the brand identity, but they definitely wanted to kind of change the interiors and the look and the feel. So it was more airy. The white was very airy, and we decided to do the shoot with Suryan and Dang with the dog. So the story was, because this is the dog of the owner, and the whole concept was that every day we would go to the site, the dog would be at the site. So we decided to take the dog in the shoot. So it was a very interesting, the whole idea was that the dog's name is Mia.
Hmm.
So we kind of conceptualized the shoot, called it Mia and her friends at the optometrist. So it's like Mia takes her friends to the Magoo Optics to, by their friends spectacles who can't see. So that's why you have the, the black drop on the face. So that's the identity we're going to, kind of create, the last stage, the photography to the architectural branding. See, it's an interesting process if you
Hmm.
decide to do it in an interesting way, right? You will definitely ask me, why have you used terrazzo, which is a sprinkle of colors, while at an optical store? That is what, where my definition of bizarre comes in. Okay, this is my definition. This is a definite bizarre definition, but it did work well. The sales went 3 times the, the average cost, and that gave me happiness. So, you
Hmm.
know that is what you want to create. Simple, nice ideologies, nothing overpowering. When you see the spectacles or the shades out here, they are getting the attention while your architecture is also getting attention. So that is the balance you need to create as an architect.
Hmm. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of questions pouring in.
Yeah.
Um, some are repeated,
Sure.
but okay, just take a while to read for myself before I read for you. Okay, so Rutuja Banker is asking, when do you freeze your design ideas? Because the ideation process is like a continuum, right? So when do you know that, okay, you found what you wanted, and when do you stop?
No, no, no. You can't freeze your design day one. I'm so sorry to say that, but as an architect, knowing me, knowing my team, my firm, we can never ever, like, obviously we do design, freeze the design. Let's say 85%, I would say clearly, but the rest 15% comes along with the whole process. For example, if you see the plan that's going on right now, the plan was, actually a sort of a disfigured angular, sort of a display, which later on went straight to kind of, because obviously a disfigured kind of gives more space to the display. But while we were doing it, while we were playing with the subtle materiality of terrazzo and all, we decided, let's go straight. So these are the sort of changes that happen. Obviously, while you become an architect, you create these BOQs, the bill of quantities, day one, you're giving the costings to the client. We always add up, let's say 10 to 15% as contingencies. Okay, these are
Mhm.
the miscellaneous contingencies that you have to add in your billings, because you never know as an architect or as a designer. See, you have to understand, you are no god. Okay, nor is the client. So while you're going through the process, please, you can't identify day one that you will have this proper wall. This, yes, we can do it till, let's say, maximum 90%, but the rest 10% is a very organic process. So it's a beautiful question that you asked me. But as an architect, I can definitely say, uh, if I would say that yes, we freeze it and then we make it through the, the renders that were obviously, while you see, these were all renders made 6 months back before this project started, and it's exactly the same. So for
Mhm.
example, you see the, the wheelchair thing, which was not allowed by the government out there. So things change. Some changes are out of your hands as well. Okay, some
Yeah.
changes are within your hands, and you see it through the whole space. So precisely, you are there 90% while you can see the pictures and actual renderings, but still, some things are left unsaid, and they should be left unsaid, because that's where you become aware of the unaware. So that is where the process should be left for the time to decide rather than you deciding it.
Right. Okay, so what if the client is not sure about what he wanted, and what if the client is not sure if your idea works? So these are similar kind of questions by Vibha and Sri Raksha.
That's
So
another good question, in the sense of, a lot of clients don't know what they want to do,
hmm,
and that's a reality. and there will be a lot of clients who know exactly what they want.
That is
So
also a problem sometimes, isn't it?
that is another problem. So, but luckily for us, Umesh, we've been blessed with a lot of good clients. They understand
Absolutely. Yeah.
uh, they understand what real design means.
Hmm.
We're not here to kind of most important, Vibha, is the trust that the client has on you. Okay, once he develops that trust, once he knows, once he, when I was asked about why do you have different array of work going on, different colors, different materials, it's because no one person will like that very same project. Okay, I may like pink zebra today, but I will hate it tomorrow. Okay, the tastes are changing, the days, time is evolving, the designs are evolving. Some liked, the together at 12th project, some like, let's say, some X projects. So everyone has their own likings. So while we show the projects to the clients, the whole idea of having a diverse portfolio is that you get lucky with some few projects that they like, and not so lucky with the other. So the going back to the question of identifying what they really want and not cannot be done in day one. On day one, you're just setting your foot, you're setting a foundation, you're getting into their brains. It takes definitely, I would say, 1 to 2 months depending on the typology of project, because retail and restaurants are done quickly, because you don't have time, because there is a certain rent free period that they get before they need to kind of start off the rent starts off. So it's a quick process. In houses, it's obviously a bought off land that you're making the house on, so you definitely have a lot of time. So I would say an ideation process for a retail to a hospitality project will be, let's say, 1 to 2 months. Okay, stretching to three, but an house may take 3 to 4 months at least. That's the process we're looking at, because house is somewhere the person, the client will be living for the longest time of his life. But the retail and the hospitality spaces are the places they go to work to. So, and the experience also of a person who's coming to a retail space is definitely different from a person going to a house. So again, I go back to the point that it depends on the typology of an area, the idea that the client has. You need to sit, there's a saying, right? You have to get into their shoes to kind of realize what's happening and going through there. Understand his demands, understand his budget. Budgeting is very important. You have to make them feel comfortable. Okay, from the budget, work backwards in the sense of materials. When we say we use Indian materials, why do we use Indian materials? There are some clients who want to use Italian materials or the imported materials, but the cost involved are also different. But when it comes down to Indian materials, the cost also definitely goes down, because these are all locally available materials. So do your uh, working backwards, be very well aware of what he wants or what she wants, and do the back calculation to get back to a product which is going to blow their minds off, and yet being within their budgets. And to make them feel happy, uh, give them something to be happy, in the sense of a design or a cost effective way. If they are happy, then no client will stop you from doing whatever you are kind of preaching to them.
Right. So the process is also quite collaborative in terms that the architect, in collaboration with the client, works out on these ideas. It's not that architect takes the brief,
Yeah.
goes into an isolation, and then one day he comes up and says, "Okay, this is what you want to do. You have to do." It's not a
Yeah.
process like that. It's a collaborative process. So
Yeah.
at various stages, the inputs of the clients are there,
Yeah.
and there's a discussion happening with the architect and the client to reach out to something that is pretty cool for both of
Yeah.
them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to answer that, Umesh, because while we see this project on the screen, this is the we call it the flip flop, and
Hmm.
it is for a very famous eyewear brand called Opium. So luckily, the whole idea of meeting the client, and he called me up one day and he saw Maggu Optics, for example,
Okay.
on the web page.
Right.
And from there he called me up and said that I also have another eyewear brand, and I want to create
Okay.
something crazy at the airport. I want people to stop at the airport for
Hmm.
my space. So again, the process changed. We wanted to go bizarre. Okay,
Hmm.
because how much is the time that you spend at a airport? If I ask anyone, let's say 10 minutes, 20 minutes, we're always juggling to catch our flights. Okay. And this is
Mm.
at the airport, in the Mumbai airport, international airport, where there are insane number of flights. No one has time. So how do you create a module? How do you architecturally solve this issue? Depends on your architecture, your interior based, mind space of the space. So when it comes down to OPM, um, how we created this module was that we wanted to create these flip-flopping modules, as you see there.
Mhm.
It's an
Mhm.
ever-changing process. It's an ever-changing process in the sense that it has to be transitory. Okay,
Mhm.
so it has to work with materiality, textures, colors, and being transitory. These are the four principles where I base Renaissance work on. Okay, if it's not transitory, somewhere down the line, obviously you will definitely get bored of it. Okay, so
Mhm.
how to kind of create a stopping an idea of stopping at the airport. We use this, this chartreuse, this fluorescent green,
Mhm.
because it was bang in your face that, wow, what is this happening? I want to go inside, look at it. And these walls could be altered as per your own, ideology, that okay, I want
Mhm.
to open these many and put the products on this, and rest all I want to create this. So if this, this whole process of, opening and closing of the shutters is happening through the idea of using these MDF wooden, um, you know small cut pieces and merging it with the tile. So it is a sort of an inception of a space, a matrix that you're creating through the tiles on the bottom and the wooden sort of cut pieces on the wall. So again, it is basically about how can you create something special with the given materials at the given time, at the given scenario for a given project. So this is how you kind of create different modules. And now please understand, a client comes while looking at a project, while we create another module for the client. While looking at this, another client will call us up to create something different. So
Absolutely.
it's a different process. It's an ever changing design process. We cannot do something, because it has to be dismantled also, because while it is at the airport, it can be easily dismantled and taken to another site and
Mhm.
installed at the other site. So think in the sense of being a modular based exercise.
Right.
The fifth point that I would base my concept of on, or a story on, of all the project, it has to be modular, or a
Mhm.
like compatible, sort of a in the sense of, taking it in the sense of being portable. If it
Mhm.
needs to be transported to another place, it can be definitely done. So these are the ideations that kind of help you get into the whole scale of the thing, because I myself sat there to kind of give a ratio to the
Right.
whole space, and
Right.
how you see how beautifully the color philosophies and the lines play in architecture. I look so tall, while the woman who was almost like, let's say, one third, three-fourth of me looks so small. So it's the perspective that you create at the site.
Mhm.
And with the mirrors, obviously, which you need to kind of create, while we created them at the Mago Optics also, if these are movable mirrors, they keep changing, they are ever changing. It creates a sort of a, Christopher Nolan's Inception, I would say. So that was the idea that we thought of with the photographer Nivedita Gupta in the end, while we were shooting it, that we want to actually capture the essence of not putting anything extra in this, but we wanted to see the organic movement at the airport. This is the organic movement at the airport while you see that.
Mhm.
No one has time. So how, while people are moving, they're all looking at it. Okay, in few cases. So you see, you have actually gotten a successful project or a module if you have created that sort of a, you know stay
Right.
in mind for a few seconds.
That's cool. So these units, they are manually movable or
These are
electronically
all
operated?
manual. These are all
Manually. Mhm.
manually movable, but you can
Okay.
definitely do it, like through a machine and all, but that costs a bomb.
Yeah.
So definitely you would, because the technology available in India is not that great
Hmm.
for these, parametric movements of
Hmm. Hmm.
ideology. So, uh, you see, while parametric has its own ideologies, this was also part of a parametric project. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
you may say that,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the idea, the
Yeah.
whole idea is
Okay.
simple.
That's
And
that's
how
good.
we kind of created this module of hiding the storage space within those units to not see any, the storage or the where the other the storage is kept. So
Hmm.
this is how you kind of create, the whole idea of, something new.
Right.
Right.
Right. So, okay, just a minute. There was one interesting question by Viva again. So
Yeah.
she's asking, okay, how do you ensure that your ideas are fresh and not repeated? Um, do you check for, do you do an internet search ensuring that, okay, this was not created by anybody else before? Or,
A great question. So, I mean, frankly speaking, you can never do that, to be really honest, obviously, while we know that we're kind of creating something new, but what is the definition of new? What is definitely new is something that I don't know, you don't know, no, nor does anyone know. So I think it's a very difficult question to answer, to be really honest. So I
right,
mean, I would say that while we have the liberty or the luxury of Pinterest to our hands, at our disposal, my idea has always been to be original. Okay? The
right,
whole idea is that uh, you see a lot of projects on Pinterest, right? I think it's the best thing that has happened to architecture, as well as the worst thing that's happened to architecture. Okay, so there are two ends of the whole answer. So uh, I think my idea is not to copy from Pinterest, but to rather have my own work on Pinterest for others to copy from. So that's the philosophy. So
absolutely.
while we were doing Pink Zebra, it's a big hit on Pinterest, and we see a lot of people taking inspiration from that. So the idea definitely is not to kind of idea of essentially being original.
Mm-hmm.
No one of our, none of us are original. Okay, none of us are original. Somewhere back in the day, that idea would have been done somewhere or the other. So I can be really honest with you, I have to be really honest with you. Please look at essentially taking inferences, the whole references, taking these ideologies in your mind, but creating something that is definitely not been done till now in the market. Being honest to what you give. Plagiarism is something that definitely bleeds, within later on rather than initially. So I
Right,
would suggest that be honest to yourself while you're doing a project. While we go through this project, this was a play school that we did in Ghaziabad, Delhi border, and the client had no clue what he wanted, sadly.
mm,
So it was his own house that we wanted to create. He wanted to create into a pre-nursery school. So how did we come up? So I was one day, kind of on web searching of like what you asked me right now, how do I come up with a preschool? You have to identify. There were a lot of preschools that were done, and all were definitely colorful, this blah 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 happening. And I was like, no man, I don't want to do it. Your first reaction should be, let's move away from what's happening in the market.
right.
Okay, then only your work will be identified in the world. Okay.
Yes.
Secondly, how do you come look at the basic things that are happening around, right around you? Okay, identify them. Look at the basic most thing that's happening, the most basic thing that's happening in front of you, and people are ignoring that. That is where our studio philosophy starts from. For example, in this project, it started from the Tetris blocks. We all play Tetris, we've been playing Tetris, and how Tetris could actually be converted into an architectural module. So these are all done in brickwork here. So a brick on edge concept was done, and we created these bricks on which we painted it, rather than having an artificial sort of a ACP sheet going on. We
Mm,
wanted to have this sort of a contrast going through the facade. Kids love colors. No, that it kind of plays with their whole psyche. They love playing with the color. So the whole idea of creating these 450 by 450 modules through bricks and Tetris blocks on the facade is something that, how did we come down to? You may ask. So I was going through, the web, and I was looking at the projects, and I was not kind of convinced with a lot of things. And then I realized that a lot of people had actually done Tetris buildings. Okay. So that is where I answer my question. Okay. Now you may say that a lot of people have definitely done it, but the way you do it, the way you kind of conceptualize it makes it different. Okay. So how does a window cut like a Tetris, like a minus or a plus thing, with the kids liking it? That is where you kind of create a cost effective module for the same. So these can be called as Corbusier windows for that example. But how do you merge it with the Tetris blocks and color it? Makes it different. I am no god, nor is the client, nor are you, but how we kind of come to a unique amalgamation of a lot of design philosophies while reading it rather than going on Pinterest to see it makes it different. I always have focused on the whole aspect of reading things. Be a good reader of a lot of articles, a lot of books. The old, the I'm a big fan of the old modernism era that happened from Corbusier to let's say Oscar Niemeyer being a modernist or a postmodernist that is not known to me, but they give me so much, kind of education through their buildings. It is insane. I cannot get that right now in the current scenario. So it's very important to go back to the roots, understanding what is right, what is wrong, the idea of playing with the scales, the idea of learning the art of playing with scales. That is what Corbusier taught us. So what we can learn from them, or let's say a Frank Lloyd Wright through his buildings, let's say Guggenheim for that matter. So how geometries play with your mind, so how colors play with your mind. So this was the initial sketch that we gave. So you may ask me the ideation process. This was the first sketch that I had, kind of created for this one. So we had bombarded the area where there was a green for the kids to kind of enjoy the area. So while you can see in the other places, the inside were pure monotonous color, not the sort of a one color arena that was given to each and every class. The old staircases were changed into these units where kids would be playing. So it's an interesting aspect if you want to create it, because it's a house changing into a pre-nursery school. You have to yourself create these modules. How the you tastefully use these colors in a transition. Okay. I hate when I see these different palettes of colors being used together and you're like, wow, it kind of is an eyesore. So you need to yourself decide what is right, what is wrong for your project while reading on it. So reading, seeing things, observing, traveling, through education, you have learned it. It's there in your mind, but how you implement it makes it different.
Yeah, beautiful. Very nice. Um, so there is a question by Anika Ghosh. How was your experience throughout architecture college?
Okay, wow. Oh, that's a great question. I hated architecture
Fine.
first year. Hated it. I don't think I wanted to do it, and
Okay.
because it was the same story with my father as well. Because while he was in IIT Roorkee, he actually went for engineering and then ended up being in the architecture wing. So that is how the story started. So he was also for the first 2 years not knowing what he was doing, because back in the day, in the 80s, architecture was not known, and you are just an architect, right? The whole respect of an architect came in later. So the same was my story. I thought that, did I make a mistake by coming into architecture? What is happening? I don't know anything while I'm an architect's son, and other kids are more, intelligent than me. And, how do they get it? Why don't I have it in me? So you do have these certain insecurities and answers or questions that you keep asking yourself within yourself while being in the first year. But I think I stood through the whole process. It was a 5-year long process with 4 years of intense studying and 1 year of internship. So I think it was a beautiful process. Back in the second year was the redefining year for me, when I actually did kind of manage to hold on to myself, learn the aspect, decide what I wanted to do, and how do I go about my future. So there is a point that in your life it comes, automatically. You don't have to kind of do it yourself. It just happens. Life happens to you, as they say it, right? So it just happened to me, and I went for a short course to AA, Architectural Association in London, and I think that somewhat changed my life. It made me more, secure about my decision to be an architect, and it made me more serious about the whole idea of taking Indian architecture to an international level. That was the day kind of I decided it, and yeah, from there I haven't looked back, and yeah, so it is not stopping out here. I'm just 28, and I'm looking forward to many more years of doing something that hasn't been done, and that's a promise to myself rather than promise to other people, because you yourself have to set your own goals as an architect rather than any other guy or your parents or anyone else telling you that too. So if you have the passion, if you're right now live with me, just promise yourself that just do something good for the whole concept of taking India to a broader network of architectural, international architecture. So just promise yourself that, and I think the passion will guide you to to a different level that you haven't seen in yourself, through the potential that you haven't seen in yourself. I saw that through my first project, the acclaimed project of Pink Zebra, that I never knew I had it in me. So it takes one good project to kind of reach a level where you think you don't even know that you have. So yeah, that is what kind of defines the whole process of being an architect's son, to not knowing anything, back to being serious in architecture, to now when I'm working with him. So while I haven't done my I did go for some another short course with to Italy, where I met Mr. Umesh. So that also helped me again. So it's these experiences, these travels, these whole ideation process of your life that teaches you to kind of design differently. So I can't tell you that right now, but it will happen to you later, sooner or later, kind of, which decides your sort of a fate.
Yeah. So Sanchit, would you like to go through the project that you have worked in Milan? I saw on your website as well.
Oh,
Would
is it
you like to
that? Yeah, yeah.
quickly, yeah, just quickly take the audience through that. It's a very interesting project. It was beautifully done.
Yeah,
It was a
sure.
very short duration of time as well, isn't it?
So we are available on Behance as well, right?
Okay.
Because our website is also there, but Behance is also shortlisted all our projects, and we have actually given
Mhm.
it. So
Yeah,
this is
that
the
one.
project that we worked with on in Milan, and again, very interesting project. There were these San Estorgio, uh, this old sort of a church connecting to a sort of a other church through the Navili. So the Navili are the old canals that used to run through the city of Milan, and how you could kind of sort of architecturally curate an answer to that was the sort of a brief that was given to us. So how we came up to the whole answer with the other fellow Italian students was something really interesting, because you know uh, it's in Italy that while working with all the Italians that I saw the whole idea of how, by being simple, okay, by being very minimal, and by being very very honest to the whole context, can you be so powerful in your design that you can see in this. Okay, so we decided to kind of create an archaeological sort of a area or museum out there, while you had these public arenas out there. You had these viewing galleries, open viewing galleries to the San Estorgio. So how, while the Navili, the old canal, was passing through, how you architecturally curate it, and command its positioning within your design. While giving these shops, these bus stations, and these public sitting areas through a simple sort of a underground experience of going from one church to the other, was the whole reason behind the tangible connections or the scooped, as we call it, at Corsa di Porto, Tunisia, Milan. So, it was a very simple ideology, as you can see it in sections. What I learned from these Italians was the way they kind of created these simple aspects. Look at the section. These are so simple. While we worked with them, while we created, myself, we created these models, these sections, we learned the whole definition of how you can just create, beauty by being very simple as well. So you see these, the whole interpretation of the old church to the new church, overlapping it with the old plan, and how we could get inferences from the old plan to kind of connections through it. So these are the certain things, while we overlaid another layer of Navili on it. So many interesting, aspects that were there. So how we created these ideas of through, the photography, the study of the models. So it was a very interesting sort of experience that we played through, in the sense of creating this module.
Right. Nice work, nice memories. I also remember that I think your team has also worked on the branding of the project, right? So you
Yes.
had T-shirts, mugs.
Yes, we
Uh,
did have it.
and,
I guess, do I have it or not? We'll have to
yeah,
see. But we did have a gallery. They did showcase our work at the gallery of the Porta. I forget the name, but at the given site, with the upcoming metro instead of the Naveli, as they call it, the canal system, they were showcasing these exhibitions where they had exhibited our work. So it was a very good feeling to kind of know that, and kind of getting appreciated by the Italian government for the work that we did. So it was nice to see that.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, what we'll do is Dion is there. Dion has a small 5-minute presentation that he would like to talk about,
Sure.
and we'll come back to your works
Sure.
later on. And
Sure.
a request to all the audience is that we are organizing these e-meets every Sunday, and next Sunday we have a very interesting um, person, okay, who speaks is going to speak about how to sell your designs. All right, so you create designs with a lot of passion, a lot of ideas, but how do you communicate it to the client and how do you sell them? All right, the person is Nitasha. So she is an interior designer. So I think she's a designer from CEPT, and she had extensive experience in working with the marketing team and collaborating with the marketing and the client and the design department. And she's also a Toastmasters speaker, right? So we have that for the next Sunday. So I suggest you to subscribe to the DQ Labs channel so that you get all these alerts. Okay, so that you don't miss out any of these interesting e-meets. All right. So Dion, over to you.
Right, Umesh. I will just share my screen.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So thank you, Sanchit. I mean, it's brilliant to have you here and listen to your story. But I just thought, we will just talk a little bit about our story as well.
Sure.
Uh, just spend a few minutes on that before we come back to you.
Sure. Sure.
DQ Labs has been nurturing talent for creative careers since 2006. And what we do is we're really transforming um, your hobby for art into a career. All right. So what we mean by that is, when kids reach out to us, they come at different age groups, class 7 onwards, and they just like sketching. You know, so what we do is we channelize that sketching into a useful output, right? So so this is an example of how we've helped Siddharth channelize his thought into a logo for a coffee company, right? It's been brilliant because you look at the output, it's really professional and looks like something that can actually be used. And there are tons of careers that come out of it, tons of opportunities that come out of it. which can help any student, really um, showcase their creativity, where their creativity will be an asset rather than anything else, right? So what we do is primarily focus on the ideation of a student and how those ideas can be generated into something useful, right? That's what we do, and this has been conceptualized by Umesh and Sean. Both of them are designers from IIT Delhi. Umesh is an architect as well. He's a TEDx speaker. He's worked with Jaguar Land Rover, with Hyundai Motors. He's the founder of DQ Labs and Examplay. And Sean is an engineer and a designer from IIT Delhi who's worked with General Motors as well as founded DQ Labs and Examplay. Um, and it's really interesting to see what they do. Um, Examplay is a learning platform. All right, it's a learning acceleration platform, the world's first learning acceleration platform, and it's been awarded by NASSCOM Design for India because of the innovative way in which we help students really learn faster, all right, and better. Now, now this area of research is called learning design, which means if something has to be learned, how do you plan it? How does an educator plan it in a way that it's learned effectively by their target students, right? So this technology has been presented at the Singapore Learning Design and Technology Conference, and it was well appreciated. All right. So all our students get absolutely state of the art top class learning support. Apart from this, we have a free, absolutely free 3-day online sketching session. This is for anyone, your grandmother, your mother, your child, anybody could, above the age of 12 could participate in this. If someone could share the link to this to register, it'll be great right now in the message. Um, Right. So if one of the counselors can do that, it'll be great. Then we have our industry e-meets like the one we're having today with Sanchit. We've had, a lot of designers and architects and fashion designers come here before. And the idea of this is to really spread awareness, get everyone to understand what design means, okay, and what do designers or architects do. We also have an entire series called E-Meet Your School, where we invite various schools to participate in these activities, to talk about their school. So kids get exposure what they're going to be doing in design school or architecture school. All this is available absolutely for free to anyone. So please feel free to invite anyone to participate in this. However, we do have our other services, which are the design exploration programs for kids aged 12 to 20. We have the skill development programs, which is really open to almost anyone. We have entrance exam coaching for those preparing for NATA, NID, USEED, NIFT, JEE Paper 2, SEED, all of these. And we have portfolio guidance for anyone who wants to either get into a school or wants to just work on their portfolio to be presented, their professional portfolios to be presented. All right. Another thing we do at DQ Labs is we believe that live projects is the way to go. All right. It's not just enough that you come and study and to crack an exam, but you really need to live what you're studying. All right. The best way to do it is to actually take a live project, and we create a lot of these live projects. We give these opportunities to students, and we've seen brilliant work coming out of this. So the next project is coming out next week, and this is only open to students of DQ Labs or the former students of DQ Labs. So please pass the word around to the DQ Lab students. We've also had students taking part in paid internships from the Learn Cloud Texas USA competitions. Designathons is another interesting thing which our students participate in, where they work with real designers to solve real problems for NGOs, absolutely free. All right. It's a brilliant platform for our students. So we've had at least about 150 students who've taken part in these designathons before. Um, nevertheless, all of this leads to, a holistic development of a student, which helps them really excel in the exam. So if we see the 2020 results, we've had um, 4 first ranks in 4 disciplines for NID PG students. We've had huge number of students who cleared NID UG, UCED, JEE Paper 2. We've had over 110 students who cleared NIFT, and the list goes on. So please follow us uh, on Instagram, dqlabs.designquotient, Facebook. Look us up on Google. We're there on the DQ Labs on the YouTube channel as well. I'll put that in the next time. And we are located across India in various cities. If you don't live in any one of these cities, you can always connect with us on our central board number 959 100 1000. Thank you so much, and that's the end of my presentation. Yeah, back to Sanchit.
Hi guys.
All right. Okay. So thanks, Dion. Thanks for that. Um, yeah, guys, if you have any doubts or anything like that regarding the programs that we offer, please send a WhatsApp message to 959-100-1000 and we will get back to you. Okay. So, Sanchit, we have a question from the audience, Mridula,
Yeah,
who
before that
asked,
question, I just want
sure.
to say something. It's a with due credit to Umesh and Dion. These guys have been doing exceptional work for the whole idea of design development in the sphere of architecture or design or the other spheres of design that we've been working with. So thank you so much. Firstly, I think I need to kind of take our time to kind of thank you guys, because somewhere down the line I need to kind of give credit to what I am right now today, in the sense of when we met that time back in the day. So I think it's very important what you guys are doing, kind of getting into the roots, taking the whole idea of working on the potential from day one instead of reaching day 10 and then going back to day one. So how you're kind of realizing people their own passion is a really beautiful thing that you're doing, and I think God bless you with a lot of more projects in the future.
Thanks, Sanchit. Thanks, Sanchit. That's very nice of you appreciating what you are trying to do. So, in fact, that was the main motto. We basically want to make these Indian designers design superheroes, right?
Yeah.
And design icons. So I'm actually very glad that you were part of the DQ Labs journey as well, and we had that opportunity to give you exposure, I mean, to Italian architecture and help you get friends there and learn something new. And I'm sure it is helping you in some way or the other in your design process and your designing.
what I, what I, what I feel the best idea about actually giving back to what you have right now is the best feeling that you can do as an architect or any professional that is there. So I think giving back what you have learned through this whole process is the little and the best thing that you can do for anyone kind of thinking of being
Yeah,
an architect right now. So I think I'm glad that you guys are doing it, be it
cool.
through me right now or be it through the other processes that you're doing. So I think I'm really glad to be a part of this journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Okay, so Mridula is asking. So you said you read a lot of books. So can you please recommend a couple of them?
I will give you a list of a lot of books that I've been reading lately. So, for example, I'm reading this by Wesley about what you say to a brick. You say to a brick. That's on a sort of a biography or autobiography on Louis Kahn's work. So you should definitely read that. And I've been reading a lot of different typologies. In the sense of towards the new architecture that's on Corbusier's work. So there are a lot of other books that I've been reading lately. So I can kind of give you the list of a lot of books to Mr. Umesh, and you can connect with Mr. Umesh for the same.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So we will definitely post it in the link below of the description of this live recording. Okay, once we get that list. Okay, so you can go through that. All of you can go through that.
Because during the lockdown, essentially is the time when actually I got time to read through these books and get into the whole research-based exercises of what they actually were doing. Because a lot of these materials are not available online. Please understand, there is a reason why a book is called a book. It's a treasure of a lot of knowledge, because these are the information that are never gonna be shared on the web pages that you see. So your whole idea, the whole idea of what you are thinking and what you cannot get on the internet is present out there on in the books. So it's a bank of knowledge. So that's why I've been emphasizing a lot on reading books lately.
Yeah. So one important thing is to increase our exposure by various ways. And as you're talking about books, I would also like to tell about this series of documentaries that are put up on Netflix. It's called Abstract.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I go through it. The
So you
seventh
can,
episode is on, I think, the big guy,
yeah, yeah, big guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Bayok. So I
yeah.
kind of like see what you learn from them is the sort of influence these architects do have in your life. I was just going through it recently only. I saw these world's best 50 homes or whatever that
Hmm.
series was on Netflix, which had the Indian sort of episode as well, which actually was showing works from architectural Brio and I think Spasm Architects.
Hmm.
There's so many. And it's so beautiful to see a episode given to an Indian architecture, like proper Indian architecture. So it was beautiful to see that, it had those uh, Mr. Malik's work, the father and son. So it is really good to see that. So I think abstract, when you talk about it, it shows the whole life journey of Bjarke Ingels, how big actually came into existence, how from college they kind of decided to do competition, and from that competition
Yeah.
they earned money, and further on their process went through and to what they are right now, one of the biggest upcoming, one of the best, as they call it. I mean, that'll be very subjective for a lot of architects like me. But a lot of people do love his work, and somewhat I also love one or few of his works. So yeah, it's a great story, and it's an inspirational story. So I think everyone should watch it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so Priyanka Rajani is asking, technology has now become an integral part of architecture. What are your thoughts on immersive and speculative architecture that uses AI, VR, AR for the design process and representation? Do you use any of those methods for visualization?
I don't think so. I'm ever going to use those
Okay.
methods. Frankly speaking, I understand with technology, we are reaching a stage in our lives where it's becoming easier to kind of design to what my dad used to have in his own time, to what I have, and to what our future will have. So I really think it's beginning to kind of work on the whole idea of the decline in the quality of architecture through AI. Okay, AI is gonna read a script, okay, and it's gonna be it a when if I compare it to, let's say, from AI, if I go back to parametric architecture for that matter, some of them do like it, but the definition of parametric is also very subjective. People may practice parametric in sustainable, like the available materials, or they may kind of practice in the future materials that are coming in. So I think for me, as my firm, I think I'm more like a sort of a sketching based, very organic concept to these material use, R&D based studio, rather than being more um, going growing towards the AI method. I don't know the future. If AI kind of gives me an edge over the other sort of forms of architecture, I will definitely think of getting into it. But as of now, for the next 5 years, I don't think with the given technology, we will be using AI in our firm.
Right. Okay. Um, so on this note, what I see in the industry as well is, like, for example, there are some design consultancies and etc. They are trying to convince their clients, especially these interior design firms, They
Yeah.
are trying to use AR, VR to showcase their probable um, interior look and feel.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had experienced that, and it is, I mean, probably maybe for a common man, it's like wow, but for an architect, it's like okay. I mean, it's still a long way to go.
You rightly pointed out, because a client doesn't have the knowledge of an architect, but
Yeah,
the architect has the knowledge of a client. Okay,
right,
because the architect can be a client himself,
right.
so he knows what he's given to the client. Okay, so in the end, it depends on how you want to showcase your space. What are the
Mm,
criteria? How you are presenting your project. Okay, if you're giving him the clear idea of how you are taking him through the experience of the space, which is rightly said. Obviously, AI, you can't match up to an AI. Okay, you are going through the space while feeling it through the VR that you have it right now. We've been also facing these issues because lately these VR guys are coming to the office and showing us, you can put this
mm,
and this, create this on Rhino, create this on SketchUp, and then get it back to,
mm,
these VR glasses, and the client can move through it, and he'll get a real experience and all. But I don't know, like I am definitely not against it also, but clients do love it, as you rightly pointed out.
mm,
But it's something that is a sort of a bringing into the decline of the whole old school of architecture thought process for me,
mm,
which I really
right.
want to kind of dwell into. So, the new school of architecture, definitely we belong to it, but that is something that is not focusing on the essential play of scales, volumes,
Mm,
sizes, ideas, basic material play. What do you see in a material play in VR and all? Because I understand you can put, like these textures on the wall and go through all the experience of the space, but is 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 that what you want as an architect is up to you. It's a very subjective question and an
right,
answer to kind of give it out.
right. So a question from Rutuja Bankar. When you're designing space where there are multiple users of different age groups, like say some residential projects where there is a child who wants something, a parent who wants something else, how do you deal with it? And I think you're showing a residence project here.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
the question is very relevant as well.
yeah.
If you can answer that.
So this was another project that we did in the foothills of Uttarakhand. Okay, you see the Himalayas behind, right? So when we make a house, okay, this was a family of four, a husband and a wife and two kids, a daughter and a son. We kind of, they were these Vastu fanatics. They wanted to create a house with the Vastu, and this was a south-facing facade. Okay, now you may ask me that, how did you kind of create this facade? So these overlaps. So you see the overlaps of the mountains that is happening. All right. You
Yeah.
take the inference from the mountains, the overlaps that keep happening of the mountains. You create those overlaps on the facade, overlapping the mountains overlaps. So that is where you get the concept from. Okay. It's a south facing facade, a lot of sun coming through every day. How do you create these, these Pardi systems? These are called Pardi systems in Indian language, where you take the heat load on the skins, the skinning happens, and the temperature inside is it has a average output of being less than 5 to 10 degrees within the interiors. So basically, by creating these overlapping wall skinning systems, you are helping in the efficiency and the use of the interior motif of the client as well as the interior spaces. So intelligent solutions, by not, as the last question said, in terms of using technology, what is the technology used out here, Amish? Like, that's what I want to ask them. It's a simple, very basic structured house. How you can go back to time, think in the sense of using these olden techniques to create newness in the current times for the future needs with the current scenario, is the need of the hour, right? So
Yeah.
this is how it answers this house answers that, creating these pockets of spaces where the greens can grow through. You can have these urban jungles while being at your house, these pockets where the ventilations are happening through these, these overlapping junctions. And yeah, just being honest to the whole story of a house, because a house is where they are going to spend almost, for a parent, let's say, rest of their life. So you see these pockets that are created. So finally, while we are doing this, please understand that we also have to follow the Vastu system. So, the whole house was following the whole Vastu criteria in terms of the placement of the rooms, the kitchens, uh, the heights also, the north being lower, the south being up. So it is interesting how, as architects, when people say that Vastu, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I think it is a great thing for an architect like us, like people like us, because it gives you the initial starting point for you to start creating the spatial, zonings and plannings of the spaces inside. So I think that is what we went through in the whole process of designing this house, because this was a couple that was not known to us. This project came through the contractors first, and then we got to know the owners later on. So, obviously, coming from a tier two city in Haldwani, in the Uttarakhand area, people were not very open to the idea of having an house like that. Please, because while you're walking into tier two cities or
Mhm.
tier three cities, people are not open or exposed to the idea of good architecture and what
Mhm.
is the definition of a good architecture. So as an architect, you need to kind of play with your guts, and tell them, the whole idea of playing with guts and glory comes into play, and being a manipulator through your lines or through your design in telling them, yes, this will happen, this will look good, giving them the guarantee that it will look nice, ultimately giving
Right.
them the whole idea. That is the role of an architect that I feel in given times.
Yeah, beautifully said. So, going by the gut, having confidence in your own work, and also giving the confidence to the
No,
client, saying that yes, it will work. That's
yeah,
very important.
definitely, because Umesh, while you see this picture, like
Hmm.
this is in front of the balcony overlooking the internal courtyard that you have. The sun
Hmm.
can come out, the sun is there, and this is facing the sun's room. So the sun
Hmm.
can obviously come out for a tea or coffee in the evening, enjoying the scigraphies that are being played on the house. So
Hmm.
it's an ever-changing process. We go back to the module that I was discussing, in the sense of it being a transitory design. So when the shadows are playing, every day the sun is moving from one part to the other. The shadows are also being formed on the facade. So it's not the same at any given time. So it kind of looks very beautiful. It's very soothing to the eye. People
Right.
love living in houses which are simple, basic, nice. Okay, that's the
Hmm.
idea.
Yeah. Nice. Beautiful.
And while we were doing this, we had another concept of changing. So this was another 25-year-old house that was given to us, and we had to change the facade. So this was another, we call it casa hypotenuse, because the whole shape is in the sense of a hypotenuse. It follows the whole ratio of a hypotenuse, and we made it in steel and composite structure. It was steel and concrete mix that was created on the facade. So this is how it looks. It's a
Hmm.
transitory. In the morning it looks. It kind of gauges your whole interest to what it is at the night. So the whole idea came from this being another south facade. I don't know how do I say it, but all the houses that we usually get are all south facade houses. So there's a lot of heat that comes from the sun.
Okay.
So we need to shield it. Okay,
Hmm.
and that is where the idea of openable louvers came in from, because if the client wanted to kind of use the gym on the top, he
Hmm.
wanted to open it in the morning, but on a normal day when you wanted to use a gym at the night, he would feel that he wants to have this sort of privacy. So how do you come up with a solution for that? That is very important. And they had a lot of AC units behind these facades. So how to make a house look beautiful
Hmm.
by hiding these services.
Yeah.
There were pipes going in, rainwater pipes, there were AC pipes, there were so many other services that were being provided to the house behind the, let's say the play of these solid physical manifestations on the
Hmm.
facade to these openable louvers. So you need to kind of carefully curate these ideologies to
Hmm.
give a solution to the client which can work really well. So the idea is that anybody, if they wanted to open on a normal good rainy day, they could open and create a new facade. So it becomes transitory in its own self. So the idea is to be very simple, very minimal, but create a module that ever keeps changing.
Yeah, yeah. You made a very good point. I mean, you're talking about hiding all the services and externally the building looking good. So,
And again, Umesh, while people are watching this,
hmm,
I tell everyone working with me, I tell everyone who's watching this, please keep your sketches from day one with you.
hmm,
Scan
yeah,
them as soon as you make it. I always scan my sketches. You see these sketches,
hmm,
there it shows the organic design development of the space.
yes,
From where it was a straight facade that I wanted to create to what it actually became like a casa hypotenuse, these hypotenuse walls that I wanted to kind of induce in terms of as an architectural element or an aesthetic element. So
hmm,
this is where the whole idea of being very old school, in the sense of being very honest to your sketches, keeping them, keep documenting your work at every stage, keep creating these modules. If you want to use, if your model is also changing on SketchUp, keep all your models next
hmm,
to each other. Show the whole process, how organically you are coming out with these elements. So that is how you grow as a designer
hmm.
while working on a design. So yeah,
True, true. Documentation is very, very important.
very important, very important.
Yeah.
These show the steel detailing and how carefully we have detailed it out.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. It's a steel structure, is it?
Yeah, this is a mix of steel structure,
Hmm,
taking the load from this is a secondary structure that's and taking the load from the primary structure, that's the back structure that's available for
hmm,
the
hmm.
space inside.
Okay.
So it's basically cantilevered on the main structure.
All right. All right. Cool.
So
So
you need to kind
Priyanka,
of create different modules of structural,
right,
structurally also, you need to play with architecture. Okay.
right.
You say that, technology is coming, use technology in the sense of using it structurally. That
Hmm,
is where my answer for using technology comes in. Okay.
right.
We have technology. We now can do wonders with the structure. That is where I answer my, the last question. How can you use, is it useful to use it in VR? I don't think so for VR right now, but for technology in the sense of a structure, yes, big yes.
Right. Cool. So as we get closer to 6 p.m., okay, so we'll have a couple of more questions. Uh,
Sure.
Priyanka Rajani is asking, do you have a favorite project, one that you have worked on and one that you look at for inspiration?
Ah, okay. That's an interesting concept question. Okay. So obviously, I don't think Pink Zebra is my favorite project now. I think it changed me, but I don't think it's my
Okay.
favorite. A project that changed me forever was Together at 12th, because this gave me another avenue, like a thought in my mind that, okay, I could create something beautiful while being very simple as well. So, it's very easy to create some, haphazard work, like something like I would say Pink Zebra, because it was different, definitely. So it will catch the attention. But while being simple and creating something different is another different ball game. Okay, so I think for me, this is one of my favorite projects because it was very simple, very elegant. It had to cater to a fine dine experience with the private dining rooms just like this one, and the spatial configuration, because I was used to working in terms of being crazy in the sense of placement of the tables and all in the other projects that I was doing. But this was tuck, like having a proper command over the plan. It was a very rectilinear plan, very, straightforward. So I was very scared, because I had never done something like that. So how do I, and how and as to what we created was something that changed my perception to architecture, that yes, by using Indian materials like dholpur, Indian wood, we can definitely change the way people look at it. So this was one of my favorite projects, if I would say. And I like Casa Forma as well, because that was a different league of in terms of creating a sort of a overlapping facade design, which did work in our favor. And we were invited to Italy last year to showcase it at the Arch Marathon Awards with Daily. So we came in second to another famous Spanish architect, Mesura. So we get to know that people do like such ideologies in architecture, not even India, but I'm talking about how the Indian Vastu and the way we kind of creating that is getting honored out there outside internationally. So that is very amazing to see, to be honest.
Right. That's pretty cool. We have one last question. It is about the traveling. So it is said that for architects, traveling is quite important. They learn a lot. So this question is from Kushi and Chaitanya. Okay. So in this pandemic situation where the travel is restricted, so what do you suggest? And yeah, so what do you suggest? How do you gain that knowledge? By traveling.
It's a nice question because essentially, as an architect, ever since I actually started doing, dwelling into the whole concept of architecture, I've been traveling a lot. Every year I do travel a lot. Because we've been doing a lot of international projects as well. We've been doing a lot of projects in New Zealand. We've been working with Apple closely in New Zealand. We're working in with a lot of cafes in New Zealand. So my travel to New Zealand keeps happening. So I do travel to Europe, to America a lot. So I think travel does give you a sort of an edge over uh, the other competition, if you have to ask me, because it gives you a lot of exposure. It's a very cliched statement. Yes, it does give you exposure, but how you go to, like, if I'm going to any city that I'm traveling, I definitely read up on a lot of other architectural elements that are there in that given city. So I do make a point to go visit that city specifically for that very architectural marvel out there. So for example, if I'm in New York, I will be going to the Vessel by you know Thomas, and then I would be going to Guggenheim for that matter, and many other buildings by, let's say, Sana Architects. So there's so many things that you can do, and from there you get such detailing when you're experiencing the whole space, or you go visit, Mies van der Rohe's, building. So you get to know that there's so much beauty in this old architecture. So I make it a point that if I'm going to any country, I make sure that I'm going to all these architectural elements. But given the present scenario of lockdown, which is honestly very sad for everyone right now, but we can't do anything about it. I have always told my firm, my studio, and the people who work with us and are closely related to working with us, associated, that while we can definitely not do anything, we are obviously reading. That's one point. But going to, let's say, you know, architectural websites, like, let's say, I have few favorites. I have Design Boom, I have Arc Daily, I have Design, I have Design Milk, I have, and there are many more. So I go through these projects every day. Just get up in the morning, just like you read the newspaper, read those projects, read on those projects, look at the way the world is performing, and the way the design is evolving in the world. What are the trends? What are not the trends? So be informed about what's going on in the world. That's most important while being an architect. So yeah, that's how I kind of keep myself informed.
Yeah, that's a very interesting input. So you can gain that kind of a knowledge, etc., by going through the websites like Design Boom or Design
Yeah,
Milk or
read
Design
articles.
Addict. And,
Read articles. A lot of
yeah.
articles. There's so many articles now. The next idea for me as an architect also is, while I'm doing a lot of restaurants, how do I
Mm,
come up with a solution for the social distancing? So
mm,
I have been working on these modules lately. So I am
mm,
actually emphasizing on how can I, because residences will go on. There's no
mm,
change in the residences. There's obviously, we are looking at these 6-7 months of hardship period, as I would say. How do we maintain, and how do these retail or hospitality projects that are going on
mm.
change in the present condition, and how do they perform later on? So this is what the research and development is happening in my firm right now. So that is what something that we're looking forward to.
Right.
while looking at the inferences that are coming on the websites, these
Mm,
websites.
mm,
So very important to be informed. Like a lot of people, countries have come through COVID. Milan is there. I think Spain is also, Italy is there. Spain is there. They have come out of there. The flattening of the curve has happened. But how do they open the restaurants now?
yeah.
That's the interesting part. How do I create a module, architectural module, which is
Mhm,
going to be interesting, but still not overplay with the whole play of the interiors? So that
mm,
is what we are focusing on right now in the given condition.
mm. Interesting. So one last question by Sejal Pahade. How long are you working in a day? Like how many hours do you put in?
I love working. I'm a workaholic. I love it. I love it. Like there's not. I think I start my work by, let's say, 10, 11. Okay, I'd say 11 o'clock, and I go until 7, 8. While we have started going in Delhi to the offices, my office being closed, so I can visit it with another few, like, because we are allowed a 33%
Mm,
occupancy right now in the office. So we, like, 2 or 3 people are there in the office. So we work till, let's say, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. Then I come back. I'm a big fan of sports and health. So I do my sort of workouts, and then I'm back at working late night. So
mm.
I love working at night because I think that is when you don't get troubled. You're thinking
Yeah.
of philosophies. I go through each and every project that's going on, and I kind of create a module for the next day.
Mm.
So I can't quantify the time that I work, but I love working because it's about the passion that you have for your work, how much you
Right.
like architecture, and how much you want to create in terms of the newness of the upcoming projects that you're doing. So you're looking at
Right.
working around the clock. You cannot stop because these are the only years that you will be putting in your time in. Later on, when you have a family and there are other responsibilities and other things, you can't, I think, won't be able to give that much time to the profession. So that's very important.
Right. Cool. Okay. So we reached to the end of the session. All right.
I agree.
So do you have any questions, Sanchit,
My question.
to the audience or anything like that?
No, my only thing is what I keep saying is that obviously there's no age to being an architect.
Mm,
I think you can start early, okay, just like I did. I mean,
mm,
obviously, people do emphasize on doing masters. Definitely is very important. But given the choice that I had while going for my masters or working with my father, I did choose my father's journey. So obviously, grasp the amount of knowledge that you can grasp from everyone you're working with. I definitely want you to work for at least 2, 3 years, or let's say 4, 5 years before you start your own firm if you're thinking of. But when you start it off, do have a 5 year plan, do have a future plan, okay? And if you don't have it, please review the thought of opening your own firm. Don't do it just for the sake of it. Don't do it to
absolutely.
please people outside. Instagram is a fake, a sort of a bogus image. I say it myself because the projects when we put in, people think that it's, oh, very well done, but you don't know the story behind it. So there's a
True.
different story running. The grass is always greener on the other side, as they
True.
say. So don't go on this beautiful image of an architect, or there's so much more to it. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. So
Mm,
do as much as you can for the passion that you like, be it architecture or be it any form profession that you're getting into. Just be happy that you have an opportunity to change the work
yes.
through your lines. So I think if you have that opportunity, you are responsible enough to give something new to the world. And be it young or old, it's not necessary to grow old and then give something good. You can give it definitely at a younger age. So that's my thought.
Right. Great. Awesome. So
Great.
thank you, Sanchit. Thank you for your time. Thank you for accepting and coming here and interacting with us. All right. So it was very nice to hear your journey, your projects, your thoughts, and your suggestions.
Definitely, if someone wants to reach out to me, they can definitely reach us out at our Instagram page on Renaissance, as well as I have my personal page as well. So any questions that you have, any doubts that you have, you can definitely reach out to us, And thank you so much, Umesh, for giving me this opportunity. Definitely, it's been a learning curve for others as well as me, while talking to you. So, I'm glad that I'm able to give back something that guys gave me back in the time.
Wow,
So, I think thank you for
that's
that.
so nice of you. Thank you for that, and we wish you a great professional career ahead.
Thank you.
And in these 5 years, you have done so much, and we are expecting a lot in the future. Probably you could be a design Indian architect icon, okay, like a star architect from India. I see a lot of potential that is happening from your side, from your firm side, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Umesh. And thank you so much, Dion.
Thank you all, and for all the audience, thank you so much for staying with us all this time. I hope it is useful for you.
Thank you for the beautiful
And
questions. Yeah, the audience are amazing. They were
yeah,
really
there's
bang on with the questions.
there are so many other questions, but I could not ask because we are running out of the time.
No worries.
But I think very interestingly, the students are asking questions and not knowingly you are answering those questions. Right? That's quite interesting because Impu has asked, okay, do you feel people say that architectural designing is a really cool job? Is it a truth or a myth? You have answered that.
It's
You
not true.
know,
It is
so
definitely not true.
that's
So
pretty cool.
you will get to know when you're designing it, right? The amount of,
Yeah,
your best teacher is actually not your, the way right now in the college, but your
right.
best teacher would be your client and your
Right.
work at site, because that
Absolutely.
teaches you so much that you won't need anything else later on.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
This is so awesome. Okay, so Sanchit, let us be in touch and
yes,
keep doing the
definitely.
great work. Okay.
Thank you. All right. See you. Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Bye. Okay, I'm going to end this session now. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.